Hey there, Wargamers, Just Aaron Paint here, and today, boom, we're going to continue working on our Gamma Galaxy Mad Cat for Clan Wolf. I'd like to welcome you guys back to the channel. If you are new here, please Apple strike that like and subscribe button. If you're a returning viewer, though, thank you for having my back. Appreciate you having my six. Appreciate you being an awesome lance mate, star mate, whatever the case may be for you. Thank you for being here to help support what I do. That said, you guys are tuned in to episode 2, or part 2, of our Gamma Galaxy Clan Wolf paint tutorial series. If you're curious about how we got to this state, make sure you check out video 1, where I talk about cleaning the model to prep it for painting. We'll apply our primer, the base coat, a transition of black to gray, for the stripes and masking that we did, and then we got it brought back up to white to have the pre-shading or the zenithal done for the next step. That said, today we're going to start off by masking off the windows a little bit on our cockpit here. Not the end of the world, but it's going to save us a step later. So we're just going to take a little bit of this masking, which I did not like from the first step, but we're just going to mash this down over the cockpit glass. Not the end of the world. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we want to keep the glass that we already have in here that's white. That way, after we airbrush, we can peel this off, and we don't have to hand do that. I'm not as worried about the kind of area around it. We obviously want it to be clean, but in the photo reference for the Gamma Galaxy, the trim for the cockpits appears to be white or beige anyway. So we'll just tidy up after we're done, and we've already got the cockpit laid in with white, and we don't have to worry about it. So there we go. We've blindfolded our Mad Cat here, and we're going to get into some painting. For our paints we're going to be using today, we're going to be using some Army Painter paints. Primarily, we're going to be using some 1.0s. I don't know what the transition is to 2.0 in terms of colors, but we're going to be using Zealot Yellow, Fire Giant Orange, and Sand Golem. I've got some swatches here. This is Zealot Yellow. We've got our Sand Golem here, and then we've got our orange. So I feel like the Zealot Yellow is pretty bright, and then this is kind of a lighter orange, and in the photo references for the Gamma Galaxy, the legs are kind of a yellowish hue, and then everything else is more orange. So we're going to be using that Zealot Yellow for the lower portions of the model, and maybe some of the undersides. And then we'll get our orange sprayed on, and then a little bit of the high points. We'll probably use a little bit of that Sand Golem, because I think that's going to be pretty, lead to a pretty nice kind of highlight for that orange. Doesn't have to be huge, be pretty subtle. We're also going to do a little pre-shading with this right here, which is familiar pink from the 2.0. And we're going to use that because the yellow over pink makes for a nice orange. So magenta works as well. So we're going to go ahead and mix these up, and then we'll start spraying on our miniature. So big shout out to Robert from Fortress Miniatures and Games for sponsoring the channel. The speed paints we're going to be using today were provided by Fortress, free of charge for me to use here on the channel to help provide some content for you guys. So if you are interested in anything and everything Battletech, make sure you check out Bobby over at Fortress Miniatures and Games. So we've gone ahead and loaded up our familiar pink here. I'm going to be spraying the undersides of the Mini here, nice thin coats, to get a little bit of a buildup of that pink. Basically, we don't want to have our yellow going over the pure black, so we're going to come in with our pink. That's coming on a little bit subtle, might have been thinned too much. Let's go ahead and get our airbrush reloaded with our pink. There we go. And again, thin coats, like we said before. You can always come in and add more paint. You can't go back and add less. So keep that in mind when you're airbrushing your minis. And the focus here is on the underside. Don't worry too much about the upper portions. It's okay to leave that white showing through. If anything, that is actually the goal. I'm just trying to get some pink laid in on the bottom. There we go, getting a nice transition down here. It's taking a little bit extra coverage. I've got this thinned down in the airbrush because I didn't want it to be too intense, but the speed paints are deceptively great. We're going to come in here at the top, though. We are going to put a little bit of gradient across the back of the Mad Cat. There we go. Next color we've got loaded up here is our Zealot Yellow, and we're going to be aiming for the lower portions here and leave the top for our orange. So particularly want the legs to have that nice yellow color, so come in and spray those. And it's completely okay to cover that pink with this. That's what we need to do. And it's going to give us this kind of a nice orange color. Remember, we can come back and do multiple passes, so don't feel too obligated to get full coverage on your first pass. Just take it easy, go slow, and you'll be all right. Alright, so now we've got our kind of yellowed up with a little bit of orange. You see how that goes over the pink? It kind of makes this nice orange. We've got that nice transition on the lower portions of the legs. Now it's time to let that dry while we transition colors, and we'll come in and hit the top parts. Now we've got our Fire Giant Orange loaded up in an airbrush. Just a little spray on the back of our hand. You can kind of see how it's got a nice different color over the yellow. And we're going to be aiming for the areas that weren't yellow as best we can. There's probably going to be a little overspray, and that's okay. But do your best. So get some targeted airbrushing. And with our Fire Giant Orange now down, next thing to do is to allow this to dry, and then we can pull off that masking. And you guys know what I'm about to do. We're gonna grab our handy dandy hair dryer, and we're going to speed up the dry process so we can get to the goodies and see what this guy looks like when the masking comes off. All right, so I think that is pretty well dry. We've gone ahead and got a little ball here of our masking material. I'm gonna come in here and carefully dab on top of the mask area and start peeling off. You can see some of the areas where I didn't quite get coverage as good as I wanted, but we're getting an interesting, cool little black stripe there. And one of the things that we get from all this effort we put into with the masking is we get, or the pre-shading with the masking is we get a little bit of a transition on our stripes, which is very nice. Come over here, peel up some of these. Probably could have stood to have gone a little darker with not so much gray up there, but yeah, it is what it is. Yes, we'll just get that off. And as I mentioned previously, this masking putty is not my favorite. At this point, I think that the stuff, or the silly putty, is probably going to fit the bill a little bit better. But trying new products and sharing my experience with all of you. Sometimes that's just what happens. Boop. This part is also super gratifying when you're peeling it off. I really enjoy that part. You can see where it's a little hazy, not as crisp as I would like, but for speed, not too bad. These didn't turn out too bad at all down here on the legs. I apologize for the loud noise. I am filming outside right now, and the acorns fall on top of the garage that I am currently filming in. So that is, them's the breaks. All right. Now I was mostly interested in the top of the Mad Cat being the nicest looking part because it is the focal point, and I think we might be in business. Yeah. Dig in where that's at. Got a little bit that's not coming off there. There we go. It's being a little persnickety. Persnickety. Alright, I think we've got a little dab right over here that we need to. There we go. Yeah, a little bit down in there. whoops, popping them off of our handle. So let's get that. Boop. Come on, come on. Yeah, see this stuff, like the silly putty also, once it touches more silly putty, it really does just kind of come right on off. This stuff is giving me some trouble. There we go. And it looks like we got little dabs still in there. Alright, so did another cursory look, make sure I did not miss anything. And I think we're in business. I think I got it all off. So the density of the stripes is not quite as dense as I would want. This stuff makes it made it really difficult to get the stripe patterns that I want. But if you're not wanting to do stuff by hand, this is one way to achieve a kind of camo pattern on your Mad Cat. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and seal this guy up. There's a variety of things that we want to do, but one of the issues with the speed paints from Army Painter is they have a tendency to bleed. At least the 1.0s. The 2.0s fixed that. I don't think that the bleeding was actually necessarily a huge problem, but the community at large, or at least the vocal minority, as I view it probably, was very upset with that. The thing that was really cool with the bleeding was that it would allow you to blend a little bit easier, which was pretty cool. But if you're not familiar with that or didn't plan for it, it can be a bit of a problem. So in this case, we're going to come in here and we're going to apply a varnish to seal this so that when we start working on other steps, any of the 1.0 paint does not actually bleed on us. And that was the solution that I recommended to anyone who was using the 1.0s. If you're worried about bleeding, just seal between steps. That is a little bit tedious, but it is one way to counteract the problem and also still allow you to have the benefit of the bleeding for blending purposes later on. So, but if you got the 2.0 paints, you don't have to worry about that too much because they supposedly fixed it. So that said, we're coming in with this Mecha varnish from Vallejo, giving them a little seal here, and then we'll come in and get some final steps in for today's portion of the video series. And with our Timberwolf now dry, it is time for us to come in with a few more steps in this portion of the series. And for that, we're going to come in and do some dry brushing to hit some nice highlights on this really quickly. Caveat, some of this dry brushing is going to hit some of the black. Don't stress over that too much. We're going for speed. We want this to look good and minimize the time investment. If that bothers you, come back in and adjust the highlights on the black to your interest. For the highlights, we're going to be using a little bit of orange and ivory from Pro Acrylic. There's no rhyme or reason to this. It's a little fast and loose. We're going to mix a little bit and see if we can get a color that we like. Oh, this is a brand new bottle. Forgot, I got to pull the little seal off, the seal of protection. Whoops. Ah. Come on. There we go. Third time was the charm. So we'll go ahead and get our lid back together. And put some in here. So we're going to go for probably pretty close to a maybe 1-to-1 first. Give us a little mix here and see how we're feeling. Okay. There might be a skoosh on the bright side. We'll see. Just a little comparison. It's a little bright. Let's put just a little orange in here. We don't want to tone it down too much. We'll put a little bit more of that orange. Just a dab. Mix that back up here. And you can use ostensibly any kind of orange you like, whatever's going to look good for you. Just don't come back to the contrast paint for this part because the contrast paint doesn't work like normal paint. So you're not going to be really edge highlighting with the contrast paint. We use that for basically forming our base coats and allow us to get straight to the detail portions without having to work too hard. So we're going to go ahead with this, pray that we got a color that looks good, and see what we like. So we're going to come in with our dry brush. I'm going to zoom out a smidgel digital here so you guys can see the paper towel. And let's use this one first. Alright, so grab us a little bit of paint. We're really working into the bristles and making sure there's not a lot on there. Go back our hand, making sure, like what we want is make sure there's not like brush strokes so we can know there's a lot of extra paint in there. Alright, we're going to do downward strokes with the model and try and just get the bright spots. So here we go. And I don't mind hitting the rear of the model where it's a little darker, but helps get some definition on those details. And again, this is dry brushing, so it's not quite as clean as edge highlighting, but for what the focus of this video is to show you techniques, help you get something painted, and you can use any or all of the things I show you. If this was me, I usually do some dry brushing anyway, and then I come in and I manually do highlights afterwards to tie it all together. In this case, this is also toning down some of the intensity of the orange, which I don't hate. It was a bit on the Tony the Tiger side. Now it's got a little bit more of that like kind of beigey orange going on, and I don't mind that at all. We don't have to worry too much. Actually, it looks like I didn't realize this. I think our masking pulled off some of the white there for our canopy. That is unfortunate, but not the worst thing in the world that could have occurred during the process. If that's one of the only few hiccups, that's not too bad. Not too bad. Let's go ahead and reload our brush here. I feel like we're getting a little light on the paint coming off here. Honestly, I don't mind this too much going over the black. It actually looks pretty alright. Okay. Also, this highlight is working pretty nice across the whole model. This is coming down across the yellow and orange, and it's still looking pretty good. Oh, here we got a little bit too crazy with the brush stroke, so we're going to come in and wipe that off quickly. The angle was such that it jabbed right up into the brush strokes and wasn't hitting like edges, so ended up getting way crazy paint in that area. Alright, I think we're really zeroing in on the done part for the dry brush. I don't think there's that much more I'd really want to target unless there's some areas on the back here that I want to get a little bit extra. Now, like I said, you could come in and you could like use that as a manual highlight on this, or add a little bit more beige and go to a real pure highlight if you want to. That is up to you. You can always continue to do more or do less. Depends on what your target objective is for the miniature in question. In this particular case, I am liking pretty well where that's at, so I think we're going to stop with the dry brush. Next step is to close our paints. Let our model dry. And then we're going to go into the oil wash step for this, and that'll be the last step we do in part 2. The first step in the oil wash phase of our project is to apply some gloss varnish. For that, I like the Battletech stuff. Do not let this dry in your airbrush because that part sucks. And we've let the model dry. So there are a variety of times where you could come in and do steps, and I'm going to do this one a little out of order, mostly because for the final of this, I want to do it on my good camera, not in the garage. But for the oil wash, generally I would do that around the time I do decals, because I'm already using gloss, but we're going to do the decals later, so be aware that that's going to be a little different. But we're going to come in here. Oof, that is, PSI is way too high. Alright, come in and apply a decently thin coat of our gloss varnish. And just like that, with a hair dryer off camera, we've got this guy dry. We'll be coming in for the oil wash. For that, we are going to be using, let's flip over this paper towel before I get it on my materials. We're going to be using some Solvent 110 from Mr. Hobby. Well, this is Mr. Weathering. This is Mr. Hobby stuff if you look it up. And then the multi-black. It is good stuff. We also got a little pink dropper, eyedropper thing that makes things really useful, especially getting the solvent out. So go ahead, and this also smells a lot like mineral spirits. I don't know if it actually is, but that is what it smells like as someone who's used some mineral spirits for traditional oil wash creation. So I like to put some in here. And I've got the extra little lid over there should I need it. So, whoops, I tried to put this on here. What a derp! Oop, the little plunger, little plug fell. Boop, got that fixed. All right. So first thing we're going to do, load up our brush here, And we're going to coat the areas of the Mini that we're about to hit with the multi-black with this first. So we'll start with the leg here. Get a nice coat, get it nice and wet on there. And assuming we gave this enough time to dry, should not have any issues. So with that wet, we're going to go straight for some of the oil wash and just come on here. And you don't have to worry too much because during the cleanup step we can come in and tidy this up, so don't stress too much if it looks a little messy. Honestly, it's probably better to be a little messy than not messy when it comes to using the oil washes. And again, I apologize for this all the time, but I am currently filming in the garage, and boy do those acorns like to rain down on my head when I'm out here. If I'm out here just doing something basic, like not filming, they're not nearly as bad, but as soon as I turn on the camera, old Murphy's Law comes into effect every time. Every time. But yeah, so that is the one leg. I feel like get a little bit more right here. Oh, okay. Wasn't dipping far enough down into the pot there. All right, and you can see that really helps define the foot relative to the rest of the model. So we're going to come in and do the same thing over here. Get that lathered up. Get our multi-black. Boop, boop. It's also worth noting, do not do this with a brush that you care about. I use brushes that are throwaway brushes to do oil washes because I'm not going to use a $20 good sable brush that I like to do something that's just going to tear it up, or I'm going to get lots of paint in the bristles or whatever. So just forewarning, this is a step where you use tools that you don't mind tearing up. All right. And I think we got that foot kind of where we want it to be, so we'll come up and start doing the rest of the Mini. Go. Yeah, it really wicks down in there. Probably going to see maximum benefit when we get to the torso. It's got those really nice panel lines up there. Also probably kind of why your host here saved that for last, because that's going to be the cool part. Like I said, don't stress too much if you get a little too much on there. We're going to clean stuff up later anyway. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. All right, here we go for the torso. And there we go. You can already see the top right there. Just instantaneously gets those dark recesses and just looks really great. Oh yeah, yeah, that's great. I love the Mad Cat as a model to do like any test scheme on too, because the torso is so great for everything. It's not only is it an iconic, great looking model or sculpt or design that screams Battletech, but like for painting, it's got a nice shape, it's got a great aesthetic, and then it lets you test stuff. It's got like, because it's got well-defined features, it's got some hard angles, it's got some rounded surfaces. It's a really all-around good, my goodness, not getting a lot of paint here, all-around good model to just test schemes on or paint. It's a right pleasure, and it's probably another one of those check boxes for why people like to paint the Timberwolf, the old Timby. I'm going a little heavy-handed here because I'm going to come back in and clean, but I really want to get some transitions up here, because with the cleaning part we can leave a little bit there and kind of get a nice gradient from it. So that's what we're doing. Okay, I think we're just about finished with where we're going to go, and we've really got this guy sopping with the oil paint. Just pull up some of that. And we got oil wash in the recesses for the LRM racks, but I may actually black out the center of that during the detail steps. Probably a 99% chance that is exactly what I'm going to do. But just in case I opted not to, I've gone ahead and filled that area with our oil wash just in case. I think, oh, you know what? I kind of missed the hip area, so let's just get a little extra down there. There we go. I think I might be happy with where we're currently sitting. I think this looks great. I think it's time to let it dry, and then we'll come in and do our step to clean it up, and then it'll all kind of start to pop even more. And with our oil wash dry, we can come in and start the cleanup process. For that, we've got some mineral spirits here, or sorry, this solvent here, and we're going to be using some of these right here. I got these on Amazon, and they're these like cleaning swabs, and they look like something you would have used if you're old enough to remember this. Hear me out. You'd clean the inside of your NES cartridge, right? Just right. I don't know if you guys ever saw that, but I remember having a cleaning kit that did that. I'm that old, but we're going to use that. We're going to dip some in this, dab some off on our paper here to get excess off, and then we're going to come in and start cleaning off the top of the model here. You can see how that brightens it right back up. So we're just grazing the top here, basically pulling off some of that oil paint and trying to leave stuff in the recesses. And the thing that's really good with this is when you do this, is you even end up with some kind of down there in the shadows, so it helps enhance your gradients, and I love it. This step is really good. It's kind of the secret sauce, if you will, for adding a little extra definition to your minis without having to honestly work that hard for it. This step is super easy. I promise anyone could do this. If you're watching this, you're smart enough to do this. I promise. I promise. If I could do this, anybody could do this. All right. There we go. We've lightened the feet right back up. The downside is you go through, ooh, that used a lot of solvent when that sopped that up. Okay. I'm going to have to order another bottle soon, so here we go. All right. Alright, now I think I am right pleased with where our Timby is after the oil wash step. Next we're going to let this dry just a little bit so that it's not still wet. Obviously, that's what the definition of drying, right, Justin? Good job. We'll let that dry, and we'll come in with our varnishes, and then we'll be done with part 2 in the series. With our Vallejo Mecha Varnish loaded up, we're going to apply our first varnish layer. I always do my varnish layers over the oil wash in 2 stages. I do this because I find the Ultra Matte that we'll do as the second stage does not adhere well to the gloss varnish, and the Mecha varnish does not have nearly the problem, so I'll do a coat of Mecha, and then I'll do a coat of the Ultra Matte. Next up on deck for our final matte varnish for this, we're going to be using the Ultra Matte from AK, which is lovely. It's great stuff. One thing you may notice here is the canopy right here for the cockpit is no longer white. I went ahead and dabbed on a little bit of the contrast to bring that back in line on the edge. I was planning for the future of videos in this series, and I just don't know where the beige or the white outline on the cockpit was actually going to be, because there's no like defined frame, and I figured it was going to be on the bars, but the actual like panel lines that wrap around the cockpit don't completely encircle, so like we need some orange, but there's no straight line where to do the white, so I figured I'd touch up the orange right here. We'll have to come back in and manually do the canopy later, not the end of the world. One of the things I wanted to make sure I did, though, was have all of the contrast paint sealed at one time, so I went ahead and did that while I was doing this step. So that said, I want to give you guys a little update if you noticed that was different when we did the cut here, but we're going to go ahead and prep our Ultra Matte and get a coat on this guy. Now, this paint, or this varnish, is very, very thin, and in the past I've had to do multiple coats, and I have to be really careful when spraying, because it will run, it will pool up very quickly, so make sure you're patient and do little thin coats. And you can see it's coming out there. It's so thin, so just be careful and be cognizant that if you come in and you just start blasting it, so anyways, to start blasting, if you do that, it will pool on you really, really quick. It's reasonably easy to avoid that, and pretty easy to fix it if it's still wet, but once it is dry, you could get some weird pooling varnish kind of stuff, and that's not what we want. So slow and steady wins the painting race, so to speak, or at least get you the quality you want, and that's what we're aiming for. So we'll get coverage here, And then when he's dry, we're going to have this really nice, beautiful matte piece for us to start doing decals and detail work on. And just like that, our ultra matte varnish is dry, and this bro is ready for the next step. In part 3, we will start covering doing decal work and details. So we'll probably do decals, we'll do some metallics probably in here on his arms, maybe black out the missile pods here and put the missile tips in. We'll see. I was thinking about maybe doing the trim on it black as well, but I don't know. We'll see when I get there how I am feeling. I do think that little bit of black breakup might actually be good for the Mini, so we may actually black out that whole thing. Now, with that said, this is where we are today. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please alpha strike that like and subscribe button. Consider perhaps being a Patreon. And as always, folks, keep painting your models, keep rolling your dice, and I will catch you guys next time. If you made it this far, you're probably a viewer that already hits that like button when you see a video come up. You're probably already a subscriber, and you probably jump into the comments down below to help support the channel, to help support that algorithm. But if you're looking for some other ways to help support the channel too, make sure you check the description down below. Maybe you want to pick up some paints from Monument Hobbies. That's my paint of choice. The Pro Acrylic line is chef's kiss, good stuff. Maybe you want to check out some of the offerings from Death Designs, where I work in my day job. We got plenty of 3D printed products, as well as MDF terrain, some of the stuff that I have designed myself and we play with here on the channel. And if you're looking to bolster your Battletech ranks, miniatures, and offerings, make sure you check out Bobby from Fortress Miniatures and Games. He's one of the main supporters of the channel as well, and supporting any of these companies helps support what I do and helps to ensure that I can continue to bring content to all of you. If you want to become a super supporter, I highly recommend you guys check out the Patreon. You guys give that extra little edge to help push more content out, and I really do appreciate that. And my ultimate goal on the channel is to continue to be able to not only put out the content we have now, but to get to a point where you can put out more content later, whether that be battle reports or painting tutorials or just more rambles, anything at all. I'd like to be doing more content for you. This is something that I enjoy. I like being able to cast a light into the darkness to bring a little bit of hobby positivity to all of you and make you feel good, and also enjoy playing games myself. As we do the final sign off here though, I do want to go ahead and switch on over and do the scroll of awesome to showcase all the Patreon supporters, the super supporters of the channel, to give them some recognition for helping support what I do. Thank you guys so much, and I will catch you guys next time.